the whole Liam Kumar Day effect, not really happening.
Nigel couldn't make it.
Yeah.
I rang up Mendon and he said he could make
Don't dig this hole. Phil, credit to the guy, always manages to do what he has, but he is a shocking person on that. You guys got a trophy? No.
It was pre-event.
No, my life from Rashad Mendon.
Right, you go. Cancel. I'm a tag, Jack. I'm a fucking tag.
Hello and welcome to the LOC Report. It's here at last. LOC Christmas has come and passed and it's really heating up, and I'm not just talking about the weather because the LOC and NFL fantasy season is swiftly going to be upon us, and of course to bring the build up to you in the most epic way possible, we of course needed a co-host. So Chris is here again. How's it going, Chris?
Hello there. Yes, it's it very much, very well, and I'm very much looking forward to this because this is absolutely the first show of the year, and yeah, it's.
Can you hear me? You okay there, Chris? You still there?
I'm still here. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm still here because it's so hot today. I can't sit upstairs because it's just ridiculous. So I'm down here in a very makeshift situation. But yeah, I think we're there. I think I can hear you all as well. So yeah, and let's proceed.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I was just testing the audio. That may have thrown Chris off a little bit there. That might have been my fault. It's a past. Yeah, it's very hot outside, as you see today. Chris was sporting a rather nice vest before, but he thought for the viewers best chuck on take the presentable option. We are a legit outfit here, of course. Well, yeah, so it's in the books. LOC Super Saturday did happen and on Saturday, the 2nd of September. Yep, and that's exactly where we're going to start. You've seen the title of the episode. It is the recap pod of that, and then the week one preview, of course, will come on into the second half of the show. So it was Super Saturday, so we'll obviously start right at the top of Super Saturday, which was starting with the division aligning event, of course, which was obviously Ben's choice this year, being the winner of last season, and it was probably the most quintessentially Ben division aligning event you could have possibly chosen, I think. Would you agree with that, Chris?
Absolutely. I don't think anybody else would have been bold enough to pull that one off.
No. Yeah, so what it involved, as you all there know, was a series of different board games, effectively. They were quite good, actually. I'd not played any of them before. Obviously, there was one very old one, being Go. Dominoes, which actually saying that I would have had played definitely probably with my grandparents or something when I was a child. What else do we have? Bananagrams, which was quite fun. There was like that OK Play, that Connect 5 thing wasn't there, and then we also had Good Face, Bad Face. So a good combination of kind of, I suppose, entry level to a very advanced. Entry level being Dominoes, of course, and then very advanced being Go, which we had to study. It felt like the rule book for to even get a fairly good understanding of it. But I thought it was quite good fun. I think I said to you when we were playing Go against each other, I think I really only enjoyed Bananagrams and Dominoes. The whole thing was fun. Don't mistake that I didn't enjoy that. Have fun for the whole thing. But the only games I enjoyed playing were Dominoes and Bananagrams, because the others were just stressful.
Absolutely, and that was the thing. Like I think Go, you have to have an unbelievable knowledge of the game. You can't just fall into the game. You can't. It's not one of those ones where you can just sort of sit down first time out and play it. That was definitely the most complex one. But yeah, I like the game. You have a bit of bluff. That was the
Good Face, Bad Face one. Yeah, once I got my head around that one, I actually quite enjoyed that one. Yeah, you're right. No, that was a grower for sure. But
for sure.
Yeah, as it happened on the day, so obviously that was great. We all played some games, but obviously the objective of which was to sort divisions, and sort divisions it did. So we obviously had like a round robin type thing where we played 2 of each game, I think it was, wasn't it, against random opponents, but we obviously all played all of the games twice. There was some sort of point system which wasn't ever actually all that clear to me, but I'm sure Ben knew how it was compiled, most importantly. And out of that, we got a top 4 of Who was it in the end? I think it was Tom, Ollie, my dad, and Mike. Was that the top 4?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
And I think Tom and Ollie played each other for the 1 and 2. No, it was
Tom and Mike, I think it was. It
Tom
was
and Mike.
it was a one-off game of dominoes.
Oh, okay, yeah. I had snuck off at that point to set up the draft stuff. So yes, I remember the cheering now. And then my dad obviously then played Ollie. The winners of that would then obviously be slotted into the divisions of their choosing. So obviously in Mike v Tom, Tom was the victor. Was that it? I can't.
Yep.
Yeah, Tom was the victor. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so he chose.
Hang on.
No,
Mike versus Tom. Mike won. Mike won the one and only game.
Mike won the one and only. So yeah, so Mike was the victor. So he came placed first in the whole thing, meaning Tom was second, and then my dad beat Ollie in the playoff game, meaning he was third. So Mike chose the Winchester division. Sorry. Tom chose the Southampton division, which naturally left my dad with the Portsmouth division. And then after that, finally we get to the whole point of it, the shuffling of the divisions. They obviously then did a linear draft order to pick which teams would go into each division. So Mike chose Ollie B, myself and Ross. My dad chose our newest league members, Jeff, Iksan and Viv. That's Ben, and Viv. And then in the Southampton division, Tom chose you, Chris, Ollie, Gardner Beddoes, and Pat. So that was how it all shook out there. Let's have a quick stop at the divisions, since we now know what they are, and have a look through. So we'll start with the Southampton division. So there's a couple of two-time champs in there, obviously with yourself and Tom, and then obviously a couple of teams that haven't had too much success in terms of playoffs and titles thus far, but have obviously had some nice seasons and are among the newest members to the league, albeit they've both been there for quite some time now. What do you make of the Southampton division, Chris?
Well, I think it's a good mix in terms of experiences. Obviously, Tom and I have been there from the start. But Ollie and Pat are no slouch. They've been there a long time now, and I'd like to see either of them compete this year to try and get themselves out of the division and into the playoffs. Because, we're now in a strange position where there are many players and many teams who have won this league, but those guys are not one of them. So yes, a good mix. I haven't been in Tom's division for a long time either. So yeah, it's nice to be there. And Pat's my absolute bogey team as well. So hopefully that can be the year to sort of exercise those demons, as it were.
Yeah, definitely. And then so we turn to the Portsmouth division, where again we have a couple of title-winning teams. Ben Estes has obviously only won it once. Actually, a few title-winning teams. Sorry, Iksan, who have, as we know now, won it twice, and then the Dream Team as well, Viv's team won it once. And the league's newest member in Jeff Scott, so he walks into an absolute lion's den, because all of these teams have been here since 2011 or before. So they're both very experienced, obviously all title-winning teams. Obviously, Iksan, Ben, the winningest coach in history. My dad's not too far off that, and Viv's had a mighty fine career to date in the LOC himself. So what do you make of the Portsmouth division?
Well, I don't think it's entirely dissimilar to the division that Dave Henderson found himself in first year that he was with us.
Yeah.
In the sense that there was a lot of experienced teams in there, but he drafted well and came out swinging in the back end of the season and did really well. So yeah, if there's one way of getting yourself used to the standard here, possibly, it is that division. But yeah, lots and lots of good teams in there, and once again we can see Ben and Dave duke it out for top spot, possibly. As usually they're there or thereabouts most years. But as you say, Viv is almost always in the regular season debate anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely as you say a shark's pit, that one there. So.
Yeah, and then that obviously leaves us at the end with the Winchester division. So yeah, myself obviously have won a title a while ago. Ollie, again, another one of the two-time champions. Mike, who again one of the newer members to the league, made the playoffs for the first time last year. And won his first playoff game, and then Ross's team again, another former champion, albeit it was a one-year wonder in the story of his career, really. So it's an interesting mix in the Winchester division compared to the other two, like you say.
I think so. I always think with the auto draft team being down there, you do have an element of being relatively straightforward. Though, who knows what, and we'll come to this later on, who knows what Ross's team will do.
Yeah.
It is a pretty wild selection of guys in there. But yeah, I think that the three above there, yourself and Ollie's always a great fixture, and we always look for that in the pod. But Mike's been pretty consistent over the last few years. He's been here and there with the playoffs. So yeah, no slouch. He's always played the game well as well, whether it be through the waivers. And I think that three guys in that division, you look at yourself, Ollie, and Mike. You're always there trying to find the deal.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a division that's going to evolve a lot throughout the course of the year.
I think you're absolutely on the money with that one. And then you have the complete counter opposite with Ross, who will not make a single move unless he absolutely has
indeed.
to. So that was it for the divisional events and the divisions. So that obviously then brings us on to the draft. So obviously within the draft, we had the build up to it. We gave Ben the commemorative mini trophies. Obviously that's the souvenir you get to keep forever and always. Whilst you have the temporary main trophy for the year of your victory. And then we also unveiled the newest entrant into the Hall of Fame, where we only received a couple of nominations for the normal voting route, both of which we didn't feel were good enough for the Hall of Fame. However, as a committee, we did decide that Larry Fitzgerald LOC career was worthy of going to the Hall of Fame because he was principally with Ben from 2010 to 2014 and then again in 2016. But between that, he won a title with Ben in that 2016 season, also won a title with you in 2017. I think he went to the playoffs as well with Phil in 2015. So obviously a storied LOC career, and being that he was on for the Ben's team for the vast majority of his time in the LOC as well, it seemed like a fitting thing to do. So that was a nice induction to have there, because we like seeing stuff go into the Hall of Fame, don't we? We can't be too precious with it. That wasn't the point of it.
Well, no, indeed, and that is absolutely it. If we don't induct anybody into it, then there's no point in it being there. But I think in this occasion, there is definitely a majority of people that would probably take that.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we put somebody in there who has been a backbone of many people's seasons throughout the course of this league's history.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know why Ben didn't nominate himself. Ben was not one of the two nominations, so I even did say to him, yeah.
Obviously just forgot,
and then that brings us on to the draft video as well. Obviously the video that I always produce each year, chronicling the winning season of the most winning coach. What did you make of the video this time around, Chris, for Ben's winning season?
It's always going to get feature length very soon, isn't it? I always enjoy these videos because people are become less and less humble over the years, for sure. We obviously had Ross's extremely unhumble video from a few years ago. Viv's was quite tasteful, and then obviously you've got Ben's from this time, where I think one of the favourite lines in that was his regular season record was untouchable. Well, if that's not humble, I don't know what is.
Yeah. You say feature length. I think it's still shorter than your one from 2020. What would it have been, 2020 or 2021? I think that one got up to about 20 minutes all in all. So, but I think this is definitely the second longest one I've done. So, but when you have a team like Ben, where obviously I kind of do the bit before the current season, and where again he's been in the league for so long, had so much success, like you kind of touched on there. Obviously won a title before this as well. A lot of the video, the length gets added in that part. When it gets to the current season, as we saw kind of with Viv and Ross's before that, where they hadn't necessarily had too much success before that, they do tend to be a bit short. So, but yeah, and obviously that's a one-time thing. So if anyone wins it again who's already had one like that, you don't start at the beginning again, if you know what I mean. It's always kind of on the relevant point, like you see with the actual America's game when you watch those on NFL Network. Speaking of which, the new one of those must be out soon actually for last year's Chiefs. So. I'll make sure to watch that. That was the pre-bit of the draft. So that brings us on to the draft itself. So we had obviously 10 in the room there. Jeff, the new league member, on the video call, and then Ross is his classic auto draft as always. Ben did elect to use his Nathania rule, as we suspected he probably would, and again we suspected he would move up fairly high in the order, but slotted himself in at 4 in the end. So he did that just before the draft, and then we'll go through the draft now. Instead of going through all the particular picks and reading them out and things like that, because there are a lot of picks at the start of the season. It's kind of like with the transfer window in English football. You can say someone won or lost the transfers, but actually it's not until you play the games and you see how the players actually do can you actually declare if someone won or lost a transfer window or not. Similar thing to the draft. You can kind of comment on what's good on paper versus ADP and rankings and stuff like that, but until a down of football is played, when all of our assumptions no doubt completely are wrong or changed or whatever have you, can you actually really comment who won or lost. But we'll just pick out some things we find interesting within each round. So starting off with round 1 then, Chris, was there anything that jumped out to you in round 1 that was kind of unusual to you, or anything interesting you want to add or anything like that?
I don't think so. I think generally speaking, the guys who scheduled to go in the first round, or at least shadowed to go in the first round, went in the first round. Now I know Pat took Justin Jefferson first overall, which it's been a while since we've had a receiver go first overall, but Pat really loves him. So no issues with that. But to have 2 receivers go in the top 3 is also very interesting, because I can't remember the last time.
No, I don't think that's ever happened.
No. So to have that was a reasonably, it's obviously a unique thing. But yeah, the main runners and riders all got taken where they should do. I don't think anybody got taken especially high. I do think that everyone's got a surefire stud running back or receiver. Travis Kelce's down there on the auto draft, 12th overall, but that's not completely ridiculous, bearing in mind how much of a focal point he is for that offense.
Yep, definitely. The one thing. Oh, sorry. Please go on if you had something else you were going to say.
No. I see Cooper Kupp 11th overall. Obviously, he may not play this.
You beat me to it. Yeah, I was a little surprised to see him go in the first, to be quite honest, because I think we got we knew about the re-aggravation or another muscle strain before the draft. We didn't necessarily know the extent of it or anything like that, but it was later reported on that day, I think it may have even been during the draft or just before, that he was flying to Minnesota to see a body specialist about it, whatever that is. So it seemed like a bit of a risky first round pick for me. I don't know, I get it, 11 if he's on his game, he beats that ranking, but I don't know, it just, we'll see later on with some other high profile players that have well-documented issues entering the season. It just seemed, I thought he'd slip to at least the second.
Yeah, I think that may be it. Class is permanent. You can't forget that Cooper Kupp a few years ago was the absolute surefire number 1 receiver in the entire league. I think things have changed somewhat since then. The Rams are not nearly as the team they were 3 years ago. But at the same time, I can understand the appeal of somebody like that when they're fighting fit, but you kind of want your first round player to be available week 1.
Yeah.
Makes it harder. Very, very least.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on to round 2 then. Anything jump out to you in round 2? Anything you found on the day a bit peculiar or anything? I think it was a fairly bog standard round 2. For me, the only thing really was I wasn't expecting Garrett Wilson to go as high as he did.
No, I wasn't either. Now I know he's got significant upside playing with Aaron Rodgers in what's going to be a win now and win first Jets offense. But for him to go above AJ Brown, surprising. I also thought AJ Brown might even sneak into the first round. But yeah, I think as well that some people got some real good draft value there. I think Josh Jacobs there is good value.
Yeah.
I think Joe Mixon's good value there. I think Devontae is probably good value there. Mahomes to go in the second round isn't completely ridiculous, and Ben's done that before, and it was a real surefire bedrock of his season last season. So yeah, again, guys you expect to go there have gone there. Maybe not in the order we expected, but certainly in the right round.
Yeah, for sure. I think round 3 was much the same. Jahmyr Gibbs was going to be one of those guys who, it would be interesting to see exactly how high he would go and where he'd go. But again, round 3, you don't really bat an eyelid at that. I suppose, again, the only thing really that jumped out in round 3 for me was perhaps how high Joe Burrow went. So we had, I suppose we'll start off with Lamar Jackson, because I suppose you could say Ben did start the quarterback run, because I followed that up by taking Josh Allen at 26. Then we had Jalen Hurts go a few picks later to Oli Bidet at 29. And then typically you would see a bit of a gap between the next quarterback, because obviously those are kind of the clear top 3. And while the next tier below, absolutely, you can make an argument for them finishing at QB1, there is a distance enough to class them in a separate tier, and as such you would expect to see the same thing in the draft. But we saw Lamar Jackson go a pick 30 straight after Hurts, and then a few picks later Burrow go as well. Now obviously when that second tier starts to go, obviously that kind of triggers the next kind of run, and we'll see obviously that when we get onto round 4 in a second. But I and we know sometimes the league can be a bit quarterback heavy, but I found it quite interesting that middle tier started to go as early as it did.
Yeah, so people were in there for an early quarterback, and I think that Lamar's in a sort of tier of his own, to be honest, because this season he could be absolutely electric. Yeah. And I can understand why somebody like that goes there. It hurts for last season's possibly, but Burrow I think is a little bit high. If I'm asked, I know he's going to be again in a very strong offense, especially through the air. But yeah. For round 3, there's still a lot of good skill positions are still there, and to sort of mortgage your draft on such a player is always a risk.
Yeah, definitely. So let's just get you back on the screen. I was just going to make it a little bit bigger there, just so the folks at home can see you properly. No, that's not going to help anyone. I'll move that off the screen. There we go. We'll do this a bit better. Yeah. So no, I completely agree. I would have expected Burrow definitely to go later than he did as well. So, not too much later. Obviously, like you say, round 4 you wouldn't have batted too much of an eyelid, but yeah, there was some still quality players on in there in round 3. And again, we had Mark Andrews go at the end of round 3 as well, which based on ADP makes sense and auto draft pick as we know, but probably wouldn't have happened if not for that. Turning to round 4 again, continuing that quarterback run, we saw Justin Fields go at 39, but it was Oli Gardner-Meadows, a well-documented Bears fan, so that's not entirely surprising to be fair to him there. And then again, we had Justin Herbert go at 42, which it just, once that run starts on the QBs, some guys just let it slide. Some guys think they have to bite the bullet and just take them, because compared to ADP and rankings and things, these guys definitely did go quite a bit above where they would have otherwise been going. And it's quite interesting actually, because there's quite a lot of in terms of the game theory and stuff of from the analysts and things this year, they kind of said you either want to be one of the first people to take a quarterback, get them at that kind of round 2, round 3 point where the value makes sense, or you kind of want to wait, because if you get sucked in and these guys get pushed up, on paper it's not worth it. Now we're a 6 point per passing touchdown league, so that obviously does change things a bit, but it was just kind of interesting to see that, and we'll see in a bit. Obviously, a few teams, like yourself as well, Chris, did wait a little bit there for the quarterbacks later on. But beyond that, I don't think there was anything else really too much to call out in round 4, unless you have anything in particular, Chris.
Not especially, It's the kind of guys you expect to go. This is the round where you can make or break your somewhat of your season, because there's somebody out there that's going to go nuclear. Alexander Madison. Oh yeah, I was so gutted he didn't make it. A couple more picks down to me, or Ollie didn't entertain the trade talks and engage in those in a bit more. But hey ho. On to round 5 then. So round 5. I guess there's nothing to... Well, actually, no, there's a couple of things in round 5. So we have, I guess, a case of a couple of running backs in Kenneth Walker, in Cam Akers, who, have quite a road path to round 1. Like you say, this is obviously, where things get much less
secure, shall we say, with players, and while they could still have upside, they also have a mightily lower floor as well. We saw another quarterback go, Trevor Lawrence, again, 51. He wasn't too much ahead of ADP and ranks. He kind of slipped a little bit after, obviously, the rest of them. And then, other than that, again, kind of guys you expected to go went. TJ Hawkinson at 54, that was an odd pick for me by my dad. I thought, we know he uses Fantasy Pros quite heavily. I was quite surprised that was the pick there, given some of the other talent available. What did you make of that?
I totally agree with you on that. I think as good as TJ Hawkinson is in the red zone, I think again you have some receivers there that are going to get plenty of volume as opposed to just red zone targets. I know that may not come to the end of the season be the smartest thing to say. Bearing in mind we saw Travis Kelce absolutely dominate the red zone last year and come, wherever it was, wide receiver 6, he wasn't a tight end.
I mean,
but
the thing with Hawkinson is though, like you get on a good point there though. Like last year, he joined a Vikings team that obviously had Justin Jefferson, unquestioned number 1, but then beyond that had an extremely aged Adam Thielen, KJ Osborne, who's he's an okay slot receiver, but nothing special. Now they've got this rookie Jordan Addison. Is he going to be able to garner the, like you say, to justify the pick here? Is he actually going to get, even if he had the same level of targets and things last year, I'm not sure he justifies where he's going here. But now he's got another very talented rookie beside him. So to your point, it's like, is he going to make the leap or not?
Yeah, and there were times in Detroit where he absolutely did, but yeah, I don't know. It's definitely a fly. It's definitely a bold move in this round for sure. Yeah.
And then lastly, we had Jonathan Taylor go as the auto draft pick to Ross, which I mean, all of us clearly stayed away from him for him to get to pick 60. For good reason, with the well-documented not only injury problems, continuing the ankle issues that he had from last season into this season, but also the kind of quite public spat that he's been having, not just with the Colts, but directly with the owner, seemingly. Obviously, he's on the physically unable to perform list, which puts him out for the first 4 games at an absolute minimum. And then nobody obviously really knows what's going to happen after that. Yeah, that's that side of the argument. The other side of the argument is, when healthy and when he's playing, he would have undoubtedly been a first-round pick. So, in some way it was quite surprising not to see anyone before this point take the plunge on him. But equally, I wonder how much further his slide actually would have gone had the auto draft not scooped him up here. What do you think about the pick?
Somebody would take a flower at him eventually, but I think to have fallen to pick 60 shows what a fall from grace that he has. And maybe Ross will get an absolute bargain come the...
this would be the most Ross thing ever.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's 7th week of the year, then he turns it on and gets himself a first-round pick. But there's too many question marks for me. There's also too many question marks surrounding a lot of things on the Colts.
Yeah,
I know they're in a slightly trash division this year, but yeah, are they going to stay in games? Is there going to be consistent quarterback plays? Is the quarterback just going to run like Lamar does and make running back value red zone only? Which, let's be honest, that Jonathan Taylor really isn't that kind of player. So yeah, I'm expecting it to be not the year that we saw Jonathan Taylor have 2 years ago, where he absolutely took the league by storm. It's going to be more of a mixed season, I think, even when he does come back, and even then, there is always going to be question marks around his health. And for teams when and this is for real life teams rather than fantasy ones, whenever there's a question mark surrounding health, they always take away volume. Yeah,
no, you're absolutely right. And to your point about running backs on teams that have run-happy quarterbacks, what you find oddly typically is it helps them with the between the 20s running. They're actually more efficient runners. Typically, you'll see a higher yards per average because you obviously have the run-pass options or just the straight run options, where defenses have to respect the quarterback running as well as the running back running, and obviously that makes it harder to defend. That makes complete sense. But it's really the goal line where they lose out on that benefit, because obviously the quarterback then themselves steals those rushing touchdowns that otherwise would have potentially gone to a running back. So yeah, like you said, there's a lot of conjecture, just even from a football perspective, beyond all the other issues with him going on at the moment. So yeah, and then obviously we had Deshaun Watson go to us with the very next pick as well. So again, it would have been interesting to see if anyone else would have drafted him with the moral stuff aside.
Well, quite, yeah.
Yeah, so I think getting auto drafted there was probably for the best, to be honest. So, and then beyond that, again, we get into this very perspective part of the draft here where it becomes a case of upside and value and sleepers and things like that. Obviously, again, we had another tight end going, Darren Waller. Now, we both said on the best and worst draft picks pods about tight end that unless you're getting Travis Kelce, and I don't mind Mark Andrews because obviously, a couple of years ago he put up a Kelce-like season, but beyond that, it's very hard to see any other tight end doing something like that. While Darren Waller could be the top option in New York, and again, he himself has produced quite well. It just seemed like again, I don't know, what did you make of the Darren Waller pick there?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Darren Waller have great seasons, but we haven't seen him have a great season for a long time. And yeah, moving clubs, moving to the Giants, it's definitely a fresh start. Bearing in mind they don't have that many consistent receivers on that team, but also he's a guy who can't stay healthy either.
Yeah.
And certainly hasn't been able to do that over the last couple of seasons. So to go there, bearing in mind that the guys below him, I took Lockett a couple of picks down. See, Mike Evans went further down. To pick him over those guys is a bit of a head scratcher for me because of just the sheer inconsistency that he would be able to provide. Yeah,
absolutely. We had Tua go to Mike again, so he's staying in bucking the trend colours for another season for as long as he's healthy at least. Again, it's another interesting one because he's a guy that in terms of mock drafts and things, he can go as late as like in our league equivalent format, probably something like the 10th or 11th round in some cases. He goes as in number 6 here. It's a tough one because obviously he's very talented and obviously he's extremely good QB when he's healthy, but as we know, the health concerns are what's kind of baked into that price. So obviously Mike got him at Mr. Irrelevant last year, isn't getting anywhere close to that again, but well, time will tell as we get through the season if this was a high position to take to or not, I suppose. Then again, I mean, the running back dead zone this year, it's called that for a reason because typically once you enter it, you don't really want any of the guys in it. But this year it seems to be absolutely thriving because you go from round 4 guys like Alexander Mattison, still into round 6, with guys like Breece Hall, Javonte Williams, and DeAndre Swift, who, again, there's a path there for those guys to be RB1s for the season. Obviously, a couple of them have their injury issues and what have you, but it's just a testament to kind of how deep the running back position felt this year. As we see more committees, we kind of saw it devalue running back, but now that teams are running a bit more heavily overall, you're actually seeing multiple running backs have value and things like that as well. So it's a very interesting dynamic that's happening. Nothing else interesting there in round 6, I don't think. So round 7 again, unless there's anything you want to point out, Chris, I don't think there's anything of particular note here. You'll see again, Ross picks up another tight end with the auto draft. That was a running theme as he did in round 8 as well. Obviously, you start to see that more of the rookies come off the board the further you get through the draft. Guys like Michael Thomas, again, even still, there's guys in this round that you could easily see them being complete fantasy contributors. It felt like such a deep draft this year that, usually I get to kind of round 8, 9, I'm kind of scratching around the last few kind of upside guys there, and then you get past that and it's just complete dark for us. This year, even at round 11, I'm like, I want more picks. There's still guys I want to take. Like it just feels like a crazy deep year.
Yeah,
we know it won't be that way in reality. It's just a lot of conjecture around things. Again, moving on to round 9, two Baltimore receivers going back to back. And then again, even guys like Raheem Mostert, who's obviously going to start the season presumably as the starter. Leading receivers like Courtland Sutton, Nico Collins still there as well. First defense off the board at 103. What did you make of that when it happened, Chris?
Yeah, bold move there, but again, if it's someone who you can just plug and play every week, and the 49ers will probably be that then you may as well. As we've talked about previously on the pod, defense and kicker are one of those hidden points that you forget about most of the season, but are really, really important.
Oh yeah.
And if you can have a baseline of double-digit defense scores every week, then chances are you're going to have a very good result each week.
Yeah, for sure. You got yourself a quarterback in round 9 as well, which compared certainly to some of the other quarterbacks was definitely a value pick at this point in Dak Prescott. Beyond that, nothing too much of note there. Round 10. Again, Ross takes a couple of tight ends on the turn there, just how the ADP and auto draft falls. Obviously, you can field a 5 tight end lineup, of which I know it may be quite possible that Ross does do this year, so we'll see. And then again, it kind of started a bit of a defense run, that pick there. You can see 3 going in the span of 4 picks. From 112 to 115. Then we had the first kicker off the board here. Justin Tucker to detonate is 1 pick ahead of Ixan, who he has famously paid for. He might be the next Hall of Fame induction, player-wise, from Ben's perspective. That was a great thing to see on the day. Not for Ben, though.
Not for Ben, no. So we know how much Ben loves Justin Tucker. I think he probably would have gone for him in that round as well, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, he's definitely the number 1 kicker in the game. And one you don't have to worry about the whole year.
Set and forget, as you say. And then I think we had the last quarterbackless team take their starting quarterback here at pick 120 in round 10, which was Patterson, taking Geno Smith. And again, just straight value. This guy finished, I think it was either QB5 or QB6 last year. Granted, you had some guys like Jackson who were obviously injured for much of the year, and two were obviously got injured during the year, which pushed them down from what they otherwise would have been. But you know, there's a case that Geno could even be potentially even better this year with the supporting cast and that offense he's got around him now as well. So it just kind of goes back to the thing, you know, there was value to be had in quarterback and waiting. So no doubt some of these teams will perhaps regret maybe taking the quarterbacks where they did versus the skill position players, of which I'm sure we'll see as the season starts to begin. Round 11, I was certain at this point, and we'll come on to the team who we did eventually go to, but I was certain Pat was going to double dip at the turn there, going back to back with quarterback, going with Geno Smith and then Anthony Richardson with the very next pick, because the way I was approaching it, if I kind of missed on one of the top guys, or if I didn't want to take one of the top guys, if I got someone like Lamar or, you know, one of the further back quarterbacks like a Geno or a Dak or something, my strategy was always to pair him with Anthony Richardson, because it just seems like the logical thing to do. You take that guy who should be good, you know, outside of injury and stuff, but you gouge yourself against injury, and then if it hits, you've got yourself a, you know, QB1 effectively for nothing at this point. But he didn't go that direction. And we'll see what happened with that a bit later on. Again, we have a few more defenses and kickers starting to go in this round, but other than that, nothing too significant. On to round 12. And I think was it this round or was it round 13? No, it was round 13. I think the pick. Yeah, so we'll come on to that in a second. So round 12. Again, I don't think there was anything too much to speak of in this round. So that brings us on to round 13. And obviously, we look back. You know, not always do you get something emerging from round 13. Obviously, it's typically kickers and defenses with the occasional good players. Van Jefferson, again, with the Cooper Cup injury, someone that could potentially, at least to start the season, pay off. We had Kareem Hunt, who's obviously a free agent currently. He was not the only free agent drafted. Officially, Ollie selected Robbie Gold with his pick, but on here I put through the actual kicker he wanted instead. So in the annals of time that will be lost, but he was the other free agent player taken. But yeah, the one I want to point out here is the one I was just speaking about, Anthony Richardson. I could not believe my eyes when I thought he was potentially going to go undrafted, and I couldn't believe that. And I was really stuck because with my round 11 pick, there wasn't a lot left by that point. Everyone's kind of, obviously, as we know, good at drafting and things. And all the sleeper, kind of nice really good upside picks that I saw kind of gone. The rest are really like prospective dart throws. He was the kind of one player on my board that I was like, you know, he's the best player available. I want to take him. And this is in round 11. But because I had Josh Allen, it just made no sense at all for me to do that. It would be a complete wasted pick. I wouldn't be able to trade him for much because, you know, even if he hits, people know I'd want to get rid of him because I've got Josh Allen. Obviously, there's no world he's better than Josh Allen, providing he stays healthy this season. But you perform my strategy perfectly here, Chris, pairing him with Dak Prescott. Should Dak Prescott not you know, he wasn't necessarily brilliant last year, but I think he was still a QB1. He's a solid QB1. For any reason he isn't, or even if he is, you have a nice tandem there with a guy that could potentially hit. And if you don't, you've got that trade bait, because it's not like an Allen where you can perfectly keep hold of those two and justify it. So really nice pick. And this could be one we look back on next year in the best and worst draft picks and say this is one of the best picks of the draft.
I really hope so. And in years gone by, we've seen Lamar and we've seen Josh Allen go much, much later than perhaps they should do in their rookie years. And I hope that Anthony Richardson will do the same sort of thing. The guy is an absolute machine and a complete athletic freak. And if he can work as those guys do and get his throwing accuracy down throughout the course of the year, this guy could be a phenomenal player.
Mm-hmm.
I've always said I like to watch games. Well, I've never seen many games of Anthony Richardson in the pros, but at college, when we were over there in the earlier on this year,
mm-hmm.
there was obviously a lot of airtime being devoted to who's going in the draft, and you saw a lot of the highlight reel of this guy, and he is a freak. So I said to myself, well, if he's still there when things come around later on in the draft for fantasy, then I'll take him. I'm really excited about the prospect of seeing him play this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And then a mere two picks later is perhaps my least favourite pick of the draft. Now, that's a hard thing to do in round 13, but now bear in mind, Ole Gardner Meadows has Justin Fields, who, again, health pending, there's no way he shouldn't be a QB1 this year. Even if he struggles as a passer, his legs are going to deliver him, boom games, even if it's inconsistent. There is no world, in my mind, even if Kenny Pickett has made an improvement from last year, there's no world where he's anything more than a back-end QB1, and that's probably your upside here. Now, I get it's a cheap pick. He can easily just go away and drop someone and pick someone else, which he almost inevitably do once we have week 1 and, have the top free agent ads and things like that. There's guys like Aaron Rodgers and stuff on the board as well. It's not like quarterback is completely barren. I mean, we can while you're speaking, I'll bring up the other free agent quarterbacks here, and we can see who else at quarterback he could have even had.
Yeah, Cousins, Goff, Daniel Jones, Derek Carr, Russell Wilson's still there, man. So there's a lot of
some guys with actual upside.
Purdy,
yeah.
Brock Purdy, who I absolutely love, by the way, he's still there. So yeah, to go for him over all those other guys is very questionable, shall we say? But we shall see. This again could be a complete masterstroke, but I'm not sure.
And then at the end, Mr. Irrelevant as always was a boring one this year by standards, but in no way a surprising one because we know kickers and defenses do come at the end. And Jake Elliott goes to Ross's team. He was actually a really crap kicker last year because the Eagles either scored touchdowns or didn't. If they got to like fourth and fairly short, they'd usually just go for it and they'd either get it or not. So it was weird. I mean, this is ADP and ranks and stuff, right? So he was put there, but I didn't really get it because they're not going to change their mentality. Yeah, it's an odd one.
It seems to work for him, so yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially when you've got a lot of running backs and an absolute huge dude who likes to run at quarterback, then yeah, why would you?
Yeah, exactly. And this is quite poignant because let's remember this is Ross's team here, who, as we know famously, if he gets double-digit waiver moves in a season, that's a busy year for him. Outside of, until he gets to his bye, he'll probably just stick with him. So, these things can have their ramifications, and that's just how it felt. But that was the draft. What did you make of the whole thing overall then, Chris?
I think it's one of the more professional drafts we've had in the last few years, I have to say. I don't think there was anything crazy. I think everyone came out with a pretty even team.
Yeah.
I don't think there was one team that was absolutely head and shoulders above everybody else. So yeah, NFL.com has obviously got its own opinions. But I do think that the people's draft strategy this year was pretty decent, and yeah, it should come out with a good outcome for us because we've had very close finishes in the league, especially the regular season, for the last 3 seasons now.
Yeah.
So having more of that can only help us, I think. So yeah, very impressed overall with everything that's happens there, and And yeah, looking forward to week 1.
Definitely, of which we'll get to in a second. Just before we exit the draft recap portion, so special commendation I'd like to give to Jeff, the newest member of the league. Never easy to walk into a new fantasy league with people you don't know, especially one like ours where it really established. Lots of us have been in it for a long time. But yeah, I happily hopped on the video call, obviously said a few words in there, here and there. And yeah, as I said to everyone when I brought him into the league, he's an established fantasy player himself, so his draft completely showed he knew what he was doing as well. And as promised when I mentioned him joining the league, not going to drop the ball from Dave Henderson in that regard. So yeah, just one final thanks to Jeff and welcome to the league. So we'll have the first debate corner of the season now, before we get to the league news, of which we need John to usher us in. He's a bit dusty, he's been in the cupboard. John, where are you? Order. Thank you, John. He's just got back from his parliamentary holidays as well. Went to Cancun, I hear, this year. So.
Oh well, yes. I hope I'm not the taxpayer.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So I actually meant to ask you before we started, Chris, but I'll ask it live on air instead. I notched down 2 things here for the debate corner this week. So I will let you choose, being the co-host. So the debate corner choices for this week are best and worst team post-draft / heading into the season, or best and worst draft pick.
Oh, well, best and worst draft pick. I mean, you know, I can say something now. I can look a right clown when we do it 12 months time or 11 months time. So I think that let's say the most interesting team composition has to be Ross's team off the auto draft.
Yeah, let's bring it up.
Because I'm not entirely sure I've ever seen 6 guys at tight end in the same team.
I think you're one short that the number is 7 tight ends for one team.
Whoa, 7 tight ends, T. Higgins, the alleged sexual offender, and Stephon Diggs. Well, I have to say,
it's a name for a band.
Well, yeah. I mean, you look at that, and actually, it's pretty strong. You know, receiving wise, if you said to me, Kelsey, Diggs, Kittle, and Higgins, and Mark Andrews are my receiving options, and I might add Jonathan Taylor in there at week 7. I've got a reasonably reputable quarterback, not morally, of course, but you know. Plus a relatively good kicker, reasonably good defense, and obviously we talked about his kicker. Then yeah, it does stack up. It's it's odd. It's an odd composition, and I will go with that. But it's not to say that it's going to completely fail, and I don't think it will. And I think it's going to surprise a lot of people.
Sure. Yeah, no, that would be my pick for whatever you want to call it. Yeah, odd composition, maybe not necessarily a worst team, but least likely to succeed. Yeah, we know that tight ends typically are capped in their scoring unless you're Travis Kelce. I mean, if this Todd Monken-led Ravens offense hits, Mark Andrews could absolutely go for 1,010 touchdowns or something like that. It's completely within the realm of possibilities. T. Higgins could obviously be sold himself. So like you say, I mean, the starting lineup-wise, especially if he were to get a healthy Jonathan Taylor back, you look at that starting lineup and you say, yeah, you can't really knock it too much. It's the depth that you obviously worry about because, you know, good luck predicting which any of those bench titans will have a good week on any given week. So
all of them. I trust Dallas Goedert in that offense. I trust. I don't know if I trust Frymouth as a guy, but I don't know if he's a fantasy high scorer. But Pitts and Ingram could be if we talk about draft value, Pitts and Ingram, if things go well for them, particularly for the Jags, could be really good. I'm not going to go as far as saying that's going to be the best draft pick that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
But they could be pretty decent down there, bearing in mind they are rando tight ends that literally nobody else wanted.
No, true, yeah. I guess Pitts as well, he was kind of a name that I would have maybe taken in the 10th, 11th as one of the last, because, you know, he is kind of the generational talent at tight end coming into the league. Obviously last year he was injured, but it's easy to forget he had 1,000 yards in his rookie season with Matt Ryan, so he was kind of primed to be taking over the next Travis Kelce, as Kelce obviously goes down on the back nine of his career. So we know the Falcons are probably going to be run heavy, but if Ridder's a bit improved, again, like you say, there's a world where Kyle Pitts is actually the equivalent of a wide receiver 2 or something like that, so we'll see. So that was the most interesting or debatable, shall we say, composition. Were there any other teams that you particularly really loved, composition-wise or strength?
Not especially. I will stick to my guns in saying that I think that everybody else has got a very similar composition in terms of their teams.
Yeah.
And is pretty consistent. I know I went for 3 running backs again. It's a system that's worked well for me for the last however many long time now, 6 or 7 years. And I will stick my flag to the mast. But Ben does the same thing as you saw there. Yeah. Albeit interspersed with a Patrick Mahomes in the middle. There's a lot of guys there that we've seen him go as an even spread. Mm-hmm. Mike isn't happy with his team now. I can tell you that. He thinks there's a lot of question marks over that. And we're looking at Pat's team here as well, and this is second season syndrome written all over it. All these guys. Sure. But all these rookies that were rookies last year. They're coming out of nowhere. We talk about recency bias a lot on this pod, and possibly that's a thing. But yes, we were talking DJ Moore in the 4th round. We didn't really talk about that before.
That was an alright pick. That's about where he's going.
To be your number 3 receiver, to be fair, isn't that bad.
Yeah.
And if your 3 running backs are Harris, Walker, and Alvin Kamara, you could do a damn sight worse. I don't want at this point to go around and say anyone's team off, actually, because I think there's a lot of interesting mixes in there. Sure,
I think yours and Ollie B's were my favourite teams. I don't know. I just looked top to bottom. I thought the starting lineup was solid, and then looking at the benches, there's either solidness or high upside there as well. So that would be my 2. Right, we'll get on to the league news now then, and obviously to do that, I need a news jingle. There it is. The schedule is now set, so you can see who you are playing week 1. We'll obviously get onto that very shortly. Games kick off on Thursday night, remember. We've got the first game this week, the Chiefs in Detroit, so obviously make sure any guys you've got in that game are in your lineup if you want them, or on the bench if you don't before that. And then we're into the thick of it. Again, remember the commissioner team-changing powers. There are some injury stuff heading into week 1, so you can obviously request your start sits based on if players are active or not across any game window like we had last year. You've just got to make sure you get that request in before either player involved kicks off. And then again, you're obviously welcome to watch the games on mine on Sunday. As I said, Becky is going to be going to see Busted, I think, in London Sunday night. So, more than welcome to come over for as long as you want. Depending on how many people get, we can get some pizzas in or something as well if people are about. So we can make it a proper NFL kickoff. In terms of injuries, I think the only key one at this point, obviously nothing new because we've not had any games yet, but I already kind of touched on the draft recap, was Cooper Kupp seeing that body specialist about his hamstring re-aggravation. So it's actually really not clear, Chris, how long he may or may not be out at this point. Week 1 seems pretty bleak at this point, but I've even seen it rumoured potentially could be a multi-week absence even at this early juncture, so definitely one to watch out for. Anything to add?
Not especially. It's Tom's done on that, as we've seen with other guys like Jonathan Taylor in the draft. There we talked about at length. The need for cut down the stretch may be greater, but it's gonna be interesting to see what he does week 1.
Yeah, definitely. I am just going to quickly check the audio still. Yeah, audio's still good because I accidentally pulled my headphones out, but I can still hear you on the thingy, so that's all good. Check out the power rankings when they land. They should be with you at some point this week, hopefully written by Tom, but if not by one of us, as is the case this season. So we will go straight on then, Chris, to the week 1 matchups. It's here at last week 1. First preview we've done in a long while. As we know, we have to pick a marquee matchup, so I'll run down the games, and then as the co-host, you obviously get to pick which one it is. Just before we do all that, obviously we know we'll be doing the pick'em and the locks as always. So I've kept the records from last season so we can keep tallying how we do all the time here. So I'm 64 and 48 in the pick'em all time. You are 52 and 32, so we're both in the black with that one. In terms of locks, I'm 11 and 9. And you're 9 and 4, so if you lock a team, there's a pretty good chance that they're going to actually win the game, as opposed to me, where it's a bit more of a coin flip, but hey. So the games we have on the slate for this week, we have Gridiron Gang against Great Scott, so that's obviously the newest member to the league, and is the Hutamaki Bowl. The actual Hutamaki Bowl, because unlike Dave, he'd left Hutamaki by the time he joined the league, but Jeff is very much in Hutamaki, so it's the live Hutamaki Bowl. Forward Flyers against Ixan, so a Corona Bowl rematch, as well as the Friendship Bowl, as we know. Tom's Tyrants against Detonators, again another Corona Bowl rematch there. You Are Gold against Louis, Ross's team. Bare Necessities against Pakistan, and Bucking the Trend against the Dream Team. Is there anywhere you want to go with the marquee matchup this week, Chris?
There's only one marquee matchup this week, Nath. I'm afraid it is Forge Flyers versus Ixan for that.
Here we go then. Marquee matchup for week 1 of the 2023 LOC season. Forge Flyers against Ixan. Forge Flyers take on Ixan here in week 1 of the 2023 season. Another chapter of the Friendship Bowl and the Corona Bowl rematch. And Ixan, the current champ, in his first appearance of the 2023 season, is projected to keep on winning here with a 98 to 94 point win. Looking down the lineups for Ixan, obviously quarterback Patrick Mahomes at the starting lineup. He is fielding the 30 personnel this week, 3 running backs, 2 wide receivers. And that's the lineup for now. Looking on the other side of the board for Chris, Dak Prescott obviously in the starting lineup there at quarterback, and he too is fielding the 30 personnel this week. 3 running backs and 2 wide receivers. The history of this matchup all time, Ixan are 6 and 14 all time against Forge Flyers, so the bogey team may not be a winning start here. Over to you, Chris.
Well, I do think that that Ben's team and my team, we obviously set up in the same sort of fashion, and really the difference in projection is all quarterback. You know, you look at Prescott to Mahomes. Yeah. I think Mahomes at home against Detroit is definitely the big play of the week, because Mahomes could really go off week 1. I know Detroit are a much improved outfit these days, and it is no shock to anyone who's listened to the podcast for a long time that I am a massive, massive fan of Dan Campbell. Absolutely love the guy and love what he's done to turn that team around. Not only the way they play, but also the mindset that they have. And as we see in sport always, mindset is a massive, massive fundamental part of making any team play properly. But beyond that, you know, I see some tough matchups in there. I think Evans with a completely unknown setup there at Tampa, with a quarterback that's been in the league but hasn't played at an unbelievably high level during that time. Christian Watson again with a quarterback that, you know, we've seen in fits and starts over the last few years and hasn't really looked the part, especially away at Chicago in week 1 as well. Massive game, massive grudge match. Aaron Jones thinks he's going to have a good day. Say if Jordan Love falls apart, then he's going to be the one that picks the pieces up there. Eckler at home is a good start as well, and Madison at home in that game against Tampa should be a bit of a walkover literally for him. Saints D down the bottom there for Ben, playing Tennessee. We don't know what Tennessee's really going to be like. We don't know how tepid they're going to be, but we do know that the offensive line for Tennessee isn't great, so we're expecting some sacks there and some good points. On the other side, so we talk about defenses. Cowboys versus New York doesn't really get much bigger than that divisionally. So away in New York, well, we're not going to call it New York. We're going to call it New Jersey because that's where it is. And yeah, that Cowboys D is an elite unit with a lot to prove in a season that, let's be honest, Jerry's got to win every year now because he ain't getting no younger. And those dudes have got to win for him. The three running backs there, we got Pierce, Stevenson, and Henry. They're all volume-based guys. Though I do worry a little bit for Houston playing at Baltimore about getting wiped out pretty early. Same with New England and Philly. But Derrick Henry versus New Orleans, I think, is going to get plenty of touches because, let's be honest, offensively, they haven't really got a great deal else other than him. I know that Hopkins has been bought. I know Traylon Burks is still. I like the tight end, but it's not renowned. And I want to see how these receivers get on for me because I love Calvin Ridley. I love his upside this season. And Tyler Lockett's safe as houses playing, what could be quite a porous LA defense. Dak Prescott again. As long as he plays a safe game, I think should be all right. But for Ben, I think that he's going to rely on Mahomes and his running backs to get himself over the line. I think that's probably what will do it here. There's too many question marks for my team's offenses playing pretty high-powered opposition, and that's why I think Ben will get himself off to a good start this season.
Okay, so you're picking Ben in this one. I'm actually going to go with your team. Here's why. Mahomes is the wild card here. Now, if Mahomes blows up on week 1, I think that's probably going to be enough to see Ben over the line because Prescott extremely unlikely to match what he would output in that scenario. But for me, while I can definitely see the potential and the upside in Ben's team, I also see a lot of vagueness and ambiguity, and I'll clarify that. You touched on Evans with the quarterback situation and Baker Mayfield there. Baker Mayfield historically is absolute fantasy poison to wide receivers. Other than that little stretch at the end of last season with the Rams, with the one of the best offensive minds in football, by the way, in Sean McVay, he has been pretty putrid in terms of actually points and fantasy contributions and things like that. So that's a question mark there. Christian Watson, he had an exciting rookie year, and that was with Aaron Rodgers, but now we've got Jordan Love. We don't know what that's going to look like. He was obviously very young, very raw as well, so we still don't know exactly what we think of Christian Watson. Aaron Jones on the other side, he's 28 now. Again, similar problem. He's in that Green Bay offense. We're not exactly sure what we're going to see with Love. You're absolutely right. They profile to be a bit more run-heavy, but obviously A.J. Dillon's there as well, so it's not a guarantee that he's the one necessarily getting all those additional touches. Eckler's a stud. He was my pick at number 2 for a long time, assuming McCaffrey wasn't there, and if I didn't go Jefferson if he was there. I called on him quite a bit, and I think I said this to you about this on draft day. He has scored about 20 touchdowns in each of the last 2 seasons. He has never had more than 1,000 yards rushing. Touchdowns are fluky in the NFL just by the nature. And Kellen Moore's offense, it's obviously a different scheme. It doesn't involve as many passes to the running backs, which is obviously Eckler's bread and butter. Now you can say, well, he's not had a running back like Austin Eckler, but we'll see what the push and shove there is. And Alexander Mattison, I love Alexander Mattison, but he's never been an official star of a team. There's questions. I don't necessarily buy into him about how talented he actually is, because obviously I wanted to trade up for him, but there are valid concerns there as well. So there's a bit of ambiguity with Ben's team. That's not to say your team doesn't have ambiguity. Tyler Lockett in week 1, I don't think Jackson Smith and Jigba's going to play, so as you say, he should have an absolute field day against that Rams team. Prescott against the Giants, that defense is improving, but still not on the level necessarily. Ridley, again, was a guy I was really high on. He looks like he's going to be the apple of Trevor Lawrence's eye. I don't know if you've read that article in the Players Tribune yet, but it's incredibly touching what he's gone through. It's a guy you really want to root for and can easily, he was a stud, obviously, in his earlier years in the league. Like you say, Henry's a stud. Stevenson, he's obviously playing a tough defense, and when they signed Zeke, I wasn't really concerned. Like I know you weren't concerned either to begin with, but then I saw some stats about his red zone efficiency is actually sneaky terrible, and as we know, that's kind of what Zeke is good at. So he'll absolutely get the between the 20s work. I wonder how much of the goal line he'll actually see, and now that the Patriots, while they don't necessarily have any amazing receiving options, they kind of have a plethora of different intriguing receiving options. Does that take away from the passing work as well? Again, he's still the lead back there, absolutely, and obviously Belichick really likes him, and we've seen running backs really produce in New England before as well. But I don't know what we'll see there necessarily. And Dameon Pierce was a guy, again, I was really high on. Again, a guy that I would have absolutely snapped up if he fell to me in the 4th round. But bizarrely today, I don't know if you saw the news, there's talks of a potential platoon approach at running back. Now, they've got Devin Singletary. He's the only really other one of note on the roster. There's a lot of Jags behind him. And I was kind of the opinion that, I'm sure you are as well, well, it's only Devin Singletary. Yes, they signed him, but lots of teams have depths and, competent other running backs there. He maybe is slightly better in the passing game, but other than that, I think as a pure runner, Pierce is better. But again, it just gives you pause for concern. But for week 1, I just think there's less ambiguity with your team. I see more consistent, more upside there. As I say, beyond Mahomes on Ben's team, so for that reason, I'm going to go with your team in this one. Injury-wise, I think your starting lineup is clean bit of health. Romeo Dobbs has a mysterious hamstring injury at the moment, so unclear if he'll be there week 1. DJ Chark, similar thing. I think he's got a hamstring thing at the moment, so we just have to see. Evans is perennially questionable, so no changes there. On to our next game then. We have Tom's Tyrants against Bed Detonators. Rematch for a Corona Bowl here with Tom's Tyrants and Bed Detonators. Projections tell us the Bed Detonators is going to relatively walk this one, 95-86. Let's take a look at what's going on there. So for Bed Detonators, he's obviously got Jalen Hurts in the starting lineup at quarterback. Then he is also fielding with 30 personnel this week, 3 running backs and 2 wide receivers. On the other side of the ball, Tom's Tyrants has Joe Burrow in at quarterback, no surprises there, but he is fielding 10 personnel. We're running a spread offense here with Tom's Tyrants, 1 running back, 4 wide receivers. Important note here, Cooper Kupp is currently in the starting lineup, but does have a projection of the 12 points there. The history of this matchup all time, let's see, let's find one. The Detonators, there you are. They are 9-11 all time against Tom's Tyrants, so it's a fairly split series. Chris, does Tom have a chance in this early stage in week 1? Assuming Cooper Kupp does not play, because, I mean, he's in the lineup at the moment, but yeah, I don't know.
Lots of streaky players in there, Nathan. I've got to say, it's a tough matchup there for Garrett Wilson. It's a tough matchup for Cook. It's not so tough for Drake London or Keenan Allen or possibly Joe Burrow, but I don't know, man. That's it. Without Cooper Kupp in there, it doesn't look the same kind of team. Doesn't look quite as exciting to me. And the bench options that he's got, I'm not sure. Not sure again. If any of those really tickle my fancy.
It would be B-Rob or George Pickens would be my guess. The next man's up.
You'd think against Arizona in that quite depleted defense that they've got. That's probably it. But even then,
that's the most generous description of the Cardinals I think anyone could possibly give at the
moment. So there's not any of them left, hardly. So yeah, I think against the other side, and you look at that, Chubb, Dobbins, and Swift are all electric runners. Adams and Williams again, big play advantage. Jalen Hurts, if he carries on from where he did last season, was absolutely electric. Plus the fact that you've got the Ravens D play in Houston. Who knows what CJ Stroud's going to be like, but they're playing at home against a rookie QB, and I'd back that. Yes, the Jags are playing against Anthony Richardson, but as we've talked about at length already, Anthony Richardson's a very different kind of player. So yeah, I don't see it for Tom this week. I see it for Ollie. And yeah, there's the difference there between first round picks. Nick Chubb is going to absolutely feast every single week, particularly this one when he's fit, healthy, and playing against the Bengals. Whilst Cooper Kupp, banged up, might not play, and that Rams team is a shadow of its former self.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you, and so much so that I will be locking up Bed Detonators this week. So it's a coin flip. Ollie, tell me what way it goes. So yeah, I mean, started quarterback in Jalen Hurts. Nick Chubb, I think I said to a few people, he would have been my pick at 2, even if Justin Jefferson was there, because in the standard format with no Kareem Hunt, profiles to get even a little bit more work and potentially more receiving work. And he was I think he was top 4 or 5 running back last year, obviously with Kareem Hunt around, and obviously a shell of Deshaun Watson kind of killing him down the stretch last year. So, as you say, he's going to feast. Really, the only option I'm not too sure on in Ollie's starting lineup is DeAndre Swift. He was kind of a real enigma for me in this draft process that I can absolutely see the upside, but I didn't want to be the one to experience the potentials, to be quite honest.
I think as your third running back, you've got every you can gamble on.
Oh, no. I'm not knocking that at all. Absolutely not. No problem with that. But yeah, if he goes for 20 yards and nothing else, it wouldn't surprise me. If he went for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, that wouldn't surprise me either. That just kind of tells you what the state of the Eagles' backfield is. And yeah, I mean, on the other side of the ball, it's health for me. Cooper Kupp, he's not. I really don't think he's going to play. I cannot see him playing this week. Joe Burrow, he's coming back from that calf. He's back training. Supposedly there's a plan, obviously, to get him to soup up, but it sounds like he's not necessarily going to be 100% of himself there in week 1. Tom definitely has some nice options, but again, you kind of look at it like James Cook. We don't really know what this Bills backfield's going to look like. The reports out of camp this year have been really good. He sounds like he's the best running back, but we also know he's not like his brother Dalvin. He's more of a slight, smaller, nifty Swift back. He's not necessarily going to get goal line. Obviously, Josh Allen, likes to run himself as well. He's one of those awkward ones to project. Garrett Wilson, like you say, can he take that next level? Will Rodgers elevate him to be a stud? Completely could possibly see that. I think I was really hoping he'd fall to me at the bottom of the second round there, because I think there's a genuine chance he could be wide receiver 1. But like you say, tough matchup, and we don't know for sure. And Drake London against Carolina. I mean, we saw at the end of last season he had some value, but by that point, Kyle Pitts was going down. Desmond Ridder's obviously the quarterback. Has he made any jumps? I don't know. It's a tough one to see. I just see there's an easier route to victory here for Bedenays for me. It's not to say I don't like Tom's team. There's definitely it's the upside team for me. I mean, if the team hits, it could be special. But as you said as well, Bedenays just looks like the more solid bet here for me. So that's what I'm going to go with too. Injury-wise, so I've covered off the starts for Tom, and then beyond that, no other news there. So we'll move on to the next game, which is You Are Gold against Louis. You Are Gold take on Louis here in week 1, and the auto-drafted team against the first time Ollie drafted in person with us, which is good to see as well. And Ollie does have the benefit of the projections here, 87 to 84. Let's take a look at the lineups. Justin Fields obviously in the starting spot for You Are Gold, and he is running with 21 personnel. So the first team we've seen here with the tight end. More on that in a second though. 2 running backs, a tight end, and 2 wide receivers. On the other side of the board for Louis, Deshaun Watson obviously in the starting lineup, and then it's a gaggle of tight ends. It is, I believe, 3 personnel, 3 tight ends, and 2 wide receivers. In the history of this matchup all time, let's see here, that's fine. You Are Gold 5-5. It's a split series, so the winner here takes the lead in the series. So it's going to be a tight end heavy game, this one, for among the 2 teams, and it's going to be for sure a tight end heavy season for Ross, I think, Chris.
I think so. I mean, it doesn't look as ridiculous as as we're saying here, I have to say, because you think that all the playmakers that you want on the field are there: Kelsey, Diggs, Kittle, Andrews, Higgins, absolutely brilliant. I would say as a receiving 5, not bad, actually, not that bad. And Deshaun Watson for me is the complete enigma here, because we genuinely don't know what he's going to be like. Is he going to be the guy of 4 years ago? Is he going to be a washed up version of himself who's living off the money? We just don't know. And similarly, there's a lot of I don't really knows across the course of this game, really, because. Is Justin Fields going to absolutely dominate as he did last season, athletically? We see AJ Brown, we see Metcalf there. Are New England just going to shut AJ Brown down? So there's every chance. I think Metcalf against LA is a great matchup. And then the other question marks: Waller against Dallas. Well, again, difficult defense. and not the most explosive offense through the air. And James Conner playing in Arizona, who literally are running out of guys with a quarterback that's non-existent. He could be the only guy that gets any sort of volume. But are they really going to be in the game? We're just going to get completely blasted out by a Commanders team that they're not great either. But they've got components that are at least functional. And then Tony Pollard against the Giants. What kind of volume will he really get? Will he be the guy that everybody wants him to be? So this is the one that's probably the most difficult one to judge, because I think that the roster team could be really consistent. But at the same time, will Fields, Brown, and Metcalf and Pollard get Ollie across the line? It could be really, really close. But actually, I'm going to go for Ross's team in an absolute random bout. This random bout of clarity now. I'm going to go for Ross's team, a team of tight ends and receivers, because I just like the fact that there's a solid floor.
Sure. Yeah, I can see it. Like, I agree. Like, for all the jokes of Ross has 3 billion tight ends, he's got the tight ends you want to own principally, like you say, and obviously, he got Higgins and Diggs as well. Obviously, he's down Jonathan Taylor at the moment, which is why you have a guy of the lesser tier and George Kittle in there, and we'll obviously see how that shakes out this year with a full complement of weapons around Brock Purdy and things like that. But you're right, yeah. The team is definitely not by any means just a complete pushover. I'm going to go with your guard just because there is a bit more upside there, I think. But like you say, absolutely, Ross's team could still be in the game. I don't think I really have anything else more to add. Injury-wise, George Kittle is questionable at the moment. I don't know exactly what his injury is, but I don't think it's anything that's going to keep him out. Mark Andrews, again, I know he's been missing some time, but I don't think there's any at this stage indication that he's in danger of missing week 1. And other than that, clean bill of health. By the way, Ross, you can add another bench player, so if you would like an 8th tight end on your roster, you go ahead and get one, buddy. I can't remember if I mentioned this as well. The team names for Ross this year are going to be children's TV shows. So Bluey is the first one with I can't remember the player. Called Lewis something, but we'll call it Louis as intended. So there you go. And week 1 is obviously an out of division week. And I can never remember what intra or inter. What way? Let's go intra conference game or intra division game week. We'll go on to the next game then, which is Bare Necessities against Pakistan. Bare Necessities take on Pakistan here in week 1, and the projections are indicating a close nail-biter of a game. 90 to basically 90, but yeah, on decimals, Bare Necessities have it. Looking down the lineups, Lamar Jackson obviously in there for Bare Necessities, and then in terms of starting lineups, I think it's as it was drafted. Yep. My dad is going with the 31 personnel, 3 running backs, a receiver, and a tight end. On the other side of the board, Pakistan, Geno Smith is the signal caller here, and they are running 20 personnel, 2 running backs, and 3 wide receivers. Again, I think it looks like at this stage as it was drafted. History of this matchup all time, Bare Necessities are 5-6 against Pakistan, so it's a fairly even series. So my dad was obviously quite unlucky to not make the playoffs last year, the first team in history to go 9-5 and not make the playoffs. Do they start off with a win in this one, Chris?
This could be a really interesting game. I think this could be high scoring, because you look down the lineups and there seems to be either porous defenses or good matchups everywhere you seem to look. Anyone who's watched this for some time, and we've been doing this a long time now, knows that I value home field advantage every single time when it comes to picking players. And Pat's got home field advantage every single game.
Pat,
and he's also
Pat
got
is just at home. You can stop. Pat is just at home. He's at home.
He is at home. don't change things. And I think week 1 home field advantage makes a big difference as well, because there's no momentum. The crowd can get behind players, they can get behind a team, and it can really galvanise them. And I think that again, it's that mentality and psychology of sport that I think is really important. So you look here, the quarterbacks. I mean, both Lamar and Geno could not have asked for a better week 1, I have to say. Both at home, both against Obviously, rotten defenses. Then you look down the line. DJ Moore playing a Green Bay side that could be in disarray. You've got Justin Jefferson playing Tampa Bay is already in disarray. Difficult matchup for Harris, but he is playing at home in San Francisco. Got to get there. Olave playing in the Superdome against Tennessee, who could be again in a bit of disarray. And we talked about Kenneth Walker and Myers and the Broncos playing Jimmy Garoppolo at home. First game of the Sean Payton era. First game for Jimmy G as the QB of the Raiders. And we haven't seen the best of him for a long, long time. We know he's not very mobile. We know that they're going to be after him from the start to try and get back to where they perhaps should be after such a down year last year. But we talk about incentives as well. The Bills are playing the Jets, and who doesn't want to go and kick Aaron Rodgers' ass? Who doesn't want to go and do that week one? So I think that there could be a very interesting one. But again, we talk about Rodgers. The fact that he didn't get drafted in our league. He's got something to prove this season. He's got something to prove by going all that way, staking his career on a move. But last time we saw that, did it pay off for Brett Favre? Not really. Not really. Those of us with the mindset. But what I'm not betting against here on Dave's team is those three running backs. Mixon, Javonte Williams, and Bijan Robinson. And Bijan Robinson is the one for me who could be extremely, extremely interesting this season. I think if he's used in the same way that Derrick Henry was used in Tennessee when Arthur Smith was there, he could be absolutely out of this world. Out of this world. And playing Carolina, who just seem to be in a constant state of disarray since David Tepper took over. To me, I think that's got A+ matchup written all over it. But then you can't say anything less about Williams and Mixon either. Debo and Hawkinson will contribute, no doubt, and Lamar, who I think will be the highest scoring quarterback this season. I'm going to put it out there now. I think that he's got something to prove. He's got paid, and he's in an offense, albeit with a new coordinator, but one that's got to have come in knowing the strength of the guy. So yes, I think Ben Sherwood is going to be the team this week. I think Pat will probably hang on to his coattails, and it will need to stretch every sinew of that to get there. But yeah, Ben Sherwood for me it will be.
We're not agreeing a lot today, Chris. Because I'm actually going to go with Pat Stan here, and I'll tell you why. Now, Jackson's I for the entire season, I think you're absolutely right that he was a guy that in mock drafts, if I could get him in the 4th or 5th round, I would absolutely gobble that up because he, as you say, has number 1 overall potential. There is risk baked into it. I'm not going to talk about the injuries because I think the injuries are a bit more fluky, but this is a different system than he's ever run. It's not a run-heavy Greg Roman-like offense anymore. It's a pass-heavy Todd Monken offense. We know he can pass the ball, but we've not seen him necessarily orchestrate that kind of offense before. Now he's obviously got a nice matchup here, but the reason I kind of said is, is it possible they have a bit of a slow start while they transition to that new offense? I don't know. I think if he has a big day, bare necessities probably does win this, but I think he needs Jackson to have a big day because I look at Hawkinson and I mentioned to you about him how we thought that wasn't necessarily the right way to go there, and Addison's a really talented rookie. He's going to need a touchdown to make his day. Debo, he's a difficult guy as well because we kind of saw Brandon Ayuk actually became the wide receiver 1 sneakily in San Fran last year with everyone back healthy with actual running backs now. So you remember a lot of his value was tied up when he was getting those manufactured touches, being effectively a quasi running back at times. He's not going to be doing that as much anymore either. So after that, he's definitely still usable, but you do have questions. Joe Mixon, in terms of opportunity, I mean, Samaje Perine's gone, so he's the unquestioned leading running back. But as a Joe Mixon last year, and again, I would have taken him if he was there in the second, by the way. But you do question just exactly how talented he is, how good he is. But volume tells you that he should be absolutely fine. But then we come on to Javonte Williams, and he obviously had that horrendous knee injury. I think it was 3 knee ligaments and maybe the meniscus as well. I can't remember, but it was brutally bad injury. Now, he's done a great job of coming back from that, and they've obviously had a plan to bring him back, but I don't know how much we necessarily see of him in week 1. Is he going to get that full workload? I highly, highly doubt it. And then Bijan Robinson, again, I completely agree with your point. That there's in my eyes, he wasn't a guy that I could have considered the two. There's an argument he could have been 101 pick with the upside if he's used, like you said, the same way Derrick Henry wasn't the talent he has. But again, it's a rookie's first game. I know running backs adjust more easily to the NFL than any other position. But again, it's just there's a lot of question marks with my dad's team, and that's not to say downsides. There's lots of little things here and there that I'm like, well, at least to begin the season, and we know my dad's teams are a bit like the Patriots here, where they have that slow start, they pick up a few guys here and there, and then watch out when you get into October and beyond. So that's all I'm saying, because on the other side of the ball, I don't really see that as much with Pat. Ken Walker, obviously Zach Charbonnet's the obvious threat there, but again, I had him again last year and he was a stud. And Gino's obviously not on the same level of Lamar, but against in that nice matchup, as you say, can produce. And everybody else there, I see, well, yeah, solid team. A couple of guys who could have some blow-up days. So I don't know. It's just there's less question marks for me with Pat Stan, so I'm going to lean that way. Injury-wise for this one, Hockenson questionable, but again, I don't think anything that threatens his week 1 status. Other than that, clean bill of health. So we'll go on to the next game here, which is bucking the trend against the Dream Team. Bucking the trend here in week 1, and the Dream Team projected to get off to a hot start with a 92-87 point projected victory. Looking down the lineups, Justin Herbert in a quarterback for the Dream Team, and then he is fielding a receiver-heavy troop as well with 10 personnel, spreading it out, 1 running back, 4 wide receivers. On the other side of the board, bucking the trend, Tours in the starting lineup. It's going to be his first game, obviously, for a while. And then he is rolling out the 20 personnel, 2 running backs and 3 wide receivers. The history of this game all the time, bucking the trend are 3-2 against the Dream Team, so it's a fairly close one. Now, I didn't do this in the draft recap bit, but I'm going to say here, Chris, before you kick off, Viv has drafted the all-injured 11, if you want to call it. He has Terry McLaurin, who has turf toe, Jerry Jeudy, who got carted off in the preseason with a hamstring injury. He has a free agent Kareem Hunt, Kadarius Toney, who, as we know, is a walking injury, and Breece Hall, who is obviously working his way back from that ACL tear he suffered last year.
Indeed.
I just said that my dad was going to be a slow starter. Viv kind of projects potentially to be the same. What do you think?
I think you're dead right, and don't forget the 49ers D, who had literally everybody on IR at one point last year. So yeah, they're all coming back. I sniff a shootout. By the way, first a week 1 shootout between the Chargers and the Dolphins. I
love a quarterback off.
Yeah, for sure. It's a huge quarterback off. But the one thing that Viv does have in his arsenal against that is the fact that he does have Tyreek Hill there as well. I think CeeDee Lamb will have a nice day. I think that Travis Etienne will have a nice day as well. But you're dead right when you say that McLaurin and Jeudy just may not perform at all. Now, if McLaurin plays against Arizona, you're going to think that he's going to have a good day because
I don't know how healthy that toe is. He sounds pretty iffy at the moment. And Jeudy as well. Exactly. I'll let you get back to it. I don't think Judy's going to play either. He got carted off with a hamstring injury weeks ago. I just can't see how he's back for week 1.
I don't see it either. So then you consider when as you said earlier on, who do you play? Well, Breece Hall, he's injured too, and then you end up having to play Gabe Davis and Tony, and absolutely rolling the dice. So yeah, there's not telling me that's going to be that's good. So on the other side, Mike's got to give himself. I know he thinks he's got a lot of question marks in his team, and perhaps he does. I think receivers, he's definitely got question marks when you look at Hopkins and Godwin and who's throwing to them. Yes, I know Tannehill's still there. He's been looking for a target for years, but playing away from home in New Orleans is not easy. Neither is playing away at Minnesota, especially when we talked about the quarterback situation there at Tampa earlier. Mm-hmm. But I do like Barkley and Jacobs. I think they're going to get used. I do like Devontae Smith because I think AJ Brown's going to see an awful lot of a lot of that New England defense. Plus the Eagles D are there, and yeah, it's a strong unit at home, playing that very tepid New England offense. So yeah, Viv could be high powered with 4 players. Don't get me wrong, and Mike needs the same four to turn up. But I think that Hopkins and Godwin may do a better job than McLaurin and Judy in this occasion. So it will be very tight. If the quarterbacks go off as we think. I'm going to buck in the trend just, especially if the Dream Team's receivers don't play.
Sure. Yeah, we are definitely.
And I'll lock it. And I'll lock it.
Oh, you lock it, like it. Okay, yeah. So you lock BTT. Yeah. Again, we are really disagreeing today because despite my concerns with Viv's injured aspects of the team, I think if you strip that away, that what's healthy is very good there. So for the purpose of this, I'm going to go ahead and assume McLaurin and Judy don't play, which would probably bring Gabe Davis and, as you say, one of Kadarius Toney and Algier into it. I also wouldn't rule out, let's not forget, he has got Kareem Hunt. There are some starting running backs out there on the Colts, obviously. If you wanted a nice week 1 volume play, it's a crazy thing to say in week 1, but it's definitely available there that he might dip into that area. But those are kind of the last spots on his team because, yeah, Herbert, Hill, and Lamb, you forget about it, like you said. Etienne, I'll be really interested to see what the Jags offense looks like because there's been a lot of talk about Tank Bigsby, and potentially being a bit more of a committee there than we think. He could be a bit more of a goal line back because Etienne's not the biggest back around, but he was obviously electric last year. Can I just say this is, again, I don't know how he does it every year. This is a classic Dream Team in terms of the flash and the swag and everything with the players he has. So
yeah,
he hasn't got Jamar Chase anymore, but it doesn't matter. It's all the same still. On the other side of the board, I mean, yeah, Tua, I think as long as he's healthy, he's going to be fine. But you kind of hit the nail on the head for me with everything else there. Barkley and Jacobs should produce. I think Mike needs them to definitely produce in this one, but Jacobs obviously was out for a while, with the kind of contract dispute. So was Barkley, but obviously he came back sooner. There's talk that maybe they're going to rely a little bit less on Barkley this year. They're still great players, don't get me wrong, but it's the other guys that you mentioned for me, Hopkins, Godwin, and Smith. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to see. Like Hopkins' new team, run heavy offense. Who knows? Godwin, Baker Mayfield, we already talked about that with Mike Evans. And Devontae Smith, he had his really good period last year when Dallas Goedert was injured. Now, I think he's an absolutely amazing, they call him the Slim Reaper, he's a great receiver. And I think Philly was an odd one last year because they were so good. They were up in the first half. They literally did not need to score points. They just bled the game in the second half and called it a day. If they take a little bit of a step back there and games are a little bit more competitive, that's probably actually going to be a benefit to their offense. And he's a magnificent receiver. But again, I don't know what we're going to necessarily see from that. So despite having the cleaner bill of health, I just feel like the Dream Team here in week 1 are the slightly better choice. So injury-wise, Mike does, as I said, does have a clean bill of health, and yeah, I covered off the injuries obviously there for this team. So we'll get on to our last game now then, which is Gridiron Gang against Great Scott. It's the debut game here for the newest league member of the LOC. Jeff Scott faces off against Gridiron Gang in the Hutamaki Bowl. Obviously my team coming off the disappointing Corona Bowl 14 loss last year. Well, the disappointment might not last long according to the projections, as the newcomer has a tough game ahead with a projected 94 to 88 point loss. Looking down the lineups, Josh Allen is back for Gridiron Gang at quarterback. And then in terms of the skill positions, rolling with the 30 personnel here, 3 running backs and 2 wide receivers. On the other side of the board, for Great Scott, Trevor Lawrence, his team's quarterback in the lineup there. And then he's running the 30 personnel as well, 3 running backs and 2 wide receivers. There obviously is no history of this game, so winner takes it all in terms of the records in this first game here. Chris, how do you think Jeff's going to fare in his first game in the LOC?
Well, I think, again, we talked about questionable and question marks over things, and it's his running back room that's definitely got question marks written all over it. Mostert, Sanders, and White. Now, I don't know if there's a more underwhelming running back room in the league, but it certainly feels as though that might be the case. Yeah, I don't know about Mostert and White. I don't know genuinely how much volume. I know White's going to get plenty of volume, but I don't know whether or not they'll actually be in games.
This is the thing. Just I was quite in on White early on and as a 6th round, 7th round draft pick. But then the more I thought about it, it's like, well, he's going to get the volume. That offense projects to be bad. And Baker is a bit better for running backs because obviously he checks down and they're obviously a bit more run heavy. But if teams can lock in on that. I had Rashad White, obviously, at the tail end of last year. I don't think he's that talented. I think the volume is all he's got going for him. You can throw that all together, and then there's talk actually that it might be a bit more of a committee than you think, because they've got a talented rookie called Sean Tucker who fell down in the NFL draft because of health concerns, but by all accounts has been quite talented and has actually been practicing with the first team. So yeah, it's a tricky one for me.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I don't think a running back on a team like that has got any sort of tangible value to me. Like, I think even for a guy like Sanders, who is obviously plenty experienced enough playing in that trash division, he's got some value. But Mostert, I think, will be superseded pretty early. I do like Lawrence Chase and Amon Ross and Brown.
Oh yeah,
those two receivers arguably are the best two receiving duo in the league. The Jets D will have better days, but not against Buffalo. And Trevor Lawrence against Indy. Yeah, it's a solid matchup, but no less solid than all your guys on the other side. And I have to say, I think Allen against the Jets, that's prime time to shine. Josh Allen. I think Cooper and Waddle as solid as you get. I think Christian McCaffrey against Pittsburgh, we're going to see the best out of him this year. So this year could really be an ascendant year for Christian McCaffrey again. And then you got Montgomery and Akers, and well, I know that Cam Akers is again in a bit of a trash offense, but if they've got nothing else to do apart from to rely on their run game, that is who they're going to be using. If in the absence of Cooper Kupp or any sort of semblance of offense, he's the man. But can we just talk about what could be the highest D score ever, by the way? Commanders versus Arizona. Down the bottom there. Oh, man. That's it. I want to see Chase Young literally sit on the quarterback the whole game.
Clayton Tune, by the way, is supposedly who it sounds like it's going to start, but you'll be familiar with Josh Dobbs if it's the alternative after last year.
Whoever it is, Chase Young is a big dude, and he's going to be on top of every single one of these guys, whoever it might be. So, look, say what you want. I think they're great. Scott have better weeks, better matchups. But Nate, I do like your team, I have to say, and I'm going to go for you.
Yeah, thank you. We agree at the end as well as we did in Tom Tyrant's and Bedente's game. I'm going to pick my team. It's a sign of confidence, hopefully, this week. If I said it, if I got Madison in that 4th round pick, I think I'd be about as happy as I can be. I never leave an LOC draft being in love with my team because it's a really tough draft. We all know what we're doing. You never get a team as good as you do in the mocks because we all push up the guys that we see between the ranks and the ADP where the noise is and what's actually good. I feel like if I got him, I'd love my team. Akers, you kind of said it. He's almost he is the equivalent of Rashad White for the Rams, but profiles to hopefully be with Stafford back healthy, a better offense. Not necessarily to say a good offense like you say, but again, you said it. He's in a contract year. He demonstrated down the stretch last year, again, going back to talent. Rashad White last year had an opportunity, couldn't do anything with it. Cam Akers absolutely did with an opportunity he had. So, as you say, with Kupp potentially not there as well, they profiled to maybe, try and lean on the run a little more. McCaffrey, like you say, transcendent. Again, there are some concerns about, just how much work they're going to give him because they do want to keep him fresh and have him for the whole season, not amazing for a part of a season and then get injured. But, that offense, and he's obviously going to be the focal point. You don't give up the money and the picks to go get that guy and not use him, obviously. And then beyond that, like you say, fairly solid. David Montgomery is kind of the only real wild card I see for me. I really wanted to get in the draft because we saw what Jamal Williams did last year. I didn't draft him expecting to repeat that because that was a bit of an outlier what Jamal Williams did, but he does profile to be, the potential goal line back and obviously the sledgehammer running back for them to Jamal Gibbs' thunder. On the other side of the ball, again, you had it absolutely right for me. Lawrence, great, good matchup week 1. Chase and St. Brown, they're going to feast. It's the running backs where it gets a little more sketchy. If those 3 running backs have a good day, I think Jeff probably would take this one. But you're more of a betting man than I am, Chris. Betting on those three to all have a good day at the same time would seem to be pretty long odds for me. Sanders has sneaky been carrying a groin injury all this preseason. I'm not sure exactly how healthy he is, and again, you say it's not a great offense with a rookie quarterback. We don't know, again, how much they will actually feature him or not. It's all a bit ambiguous. Mostert, like you say, with Jeff Wilson out to the picture, that makes things a bit clearer, but Devon A-Chain should be back. They've still got Savon Ahmed as well, so we don't know what's going to happen there, and obviously, yeah, we don't really know too much with White either. So again, like you say, all we can do at this point in week 1 is talk about the question marks, because we don't have any downs of football or anything to go off of. Like you say, I think a bit less question marks for me than Jeff, and that kind of tips the scales. Injury-wise, beyond that, Jalen Waddles obviously had a midsection injury that's kept him out of training and stuff for a few weeks, but I think he is looking like he'll be suiting up for week 1. Again, St. Brown got dinged up a little bit here and there, but he'll be back for week 1 too. Lazard's fine, as I said, with Devon A-Chain. He's come back to practice now after, I think it was an AC joint shoulder injury or something like that, so he'll be good to go. Jackson Smith and Jigba, he is very iffy at this stage with a wrist fracture he suffered in the preseason and got surgically repaired for week 1. That brings us to the end, Chris. Apologies for it being quite a bumper show, but we had a draft recap to do. We will deliver our promise of making the shows a bit punchier this year when it comes to the normal weekly shows, but obviously to cover off the season, we want to do it justice. Thank you for joining, as always, Chris.
Well, thanks for being here. It's going to be a good season. It's amazing it's only 3 days away.
I know, can't you just believe it? So yeah, I hope everyone's week goes okay. We obviously usually do this later in the week, so instead of saying have a good weekend, I said hope you have a good weekend, obviously weekend when you get there. Best of luck in your matchup, unless you're playing me, of course. Goodbye, everybody.